Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. Well, of course, there has been a continual increase in the number of mass shootings throughout the country. North Korea with more missile strikes, more putting other countries on edge, particularly Japan in this case. And Uganda warmly welcomes President Putin to their country. But first, it seems as though people are set on edge and ready to pull the trigger at the slightest drop of a hat. The latest shooting involved a 6-year-old girl, who was of course the victim, who was playing basketball outside when her ball rolled into a neighbor's yard. That neighbor shot her and her parents and is now on the run. The little girl watched her father get shot, and she suffered a bullet fragment which was later removed from her cheek. She did speak with reporters about the terrifying event.
She said, quote, "I want him to go to jail forever." Now, the police are looking for the suspect who, as we said earlier, is currently on the run. About 1,000 miles away, mothers protested on the Kansas-Missouri state line 1 week after a 16-year-old Ralph Yarrow was shot after mistakenly ringing the wrong doorbell. Now, one mother speaking to CBS Evening News stated regarding the incidents, quote, "You have mental health issues everywhere." And another said, "There's no place that you can run away from this."
Sad. Well, according to the latest statistics, more young people have died from gun violence than from COVID since the start of the pandemic. A sad fact, considering that after 24 years since the Columbine shooting, gun violence and all the legislative efforts to prevent it hasn't lessened the problem.
And I think we're on a course for a record year at this pace.
That's right.
Well, scientists are worried as they've recently discovered a hole at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Now, our oceans hold over 97% of the Earth's surface water and are a source of essential nutrients for all species and is a regulator of the climate. Now, scientists from Washington University have made an alarming discovery, finding a hole oozing water on the Pacific Ocean seabed.
Water seeping from the seabed isn't anything unusual, but the chemical composition and location of the hole makes it unusual. Found about 80 kilometers off of Oregon's coast in the Cascadia subduction zone in a fault line stretching from Canada's west coast to Northern California. Well, scientists suspect this water is coming from about 4 kilometers beneath the seafloor, located at the boundary of a tectonic plate.
Well, tectonic plates divide the Earth's crust into distinct plates and are constantly moving at a very slow pace. Now, scientists fear that once the water stops flowing out, that it could lead to a magnitude 9 earthquake that could potentially destroy cities along the Pacific Northwest.
Well, we'll now turn it over to our field correspondent Larry McGee, who has more for us on that the missile launch from North Korea and the effects that it had on Japan. And we're going to talk a little bit about more of the tensions between China and Taiwan. Larry, what do you have for us?
As the build-up towards nuclear confrontation continues to intensify, alarm bells were heard throughout Japan recently urging citizens to evacuate or seek shelter following a missile test launch by North Korea. Later, it was officially acknowledged as a mistake in so much as the missile was found not to be headed towards Hokkaido as it was thought to be. The latest test launch, however, is being seen as a harbinger in a region plagued with hostility. As further evidence of that fact, there is still the imminent showdown brewing between the Dragon and Taiwan. In the latest escalation, Tai Pai says Beijing set up a no-fly zone around some of its territories. The restrictions are said to have originally been scheduled to last for 72 hours, but were reportedly shortened to a matter of minutes after Taiwanese objections. China, meanwhile, denies that there is any truth to the claims. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, Katan, China continuing to make its moves against Taiwan. They're establishing a no-fly zone.
Yeah, and the more China pushes against Taiwan, the more the U.S. gets involved with helping them, the more displeased China gets and pushes the envelope even further.
Well, as we've reported on recently, China is ambitiously working to bring peace in global conflicts in hopes it can dictate the outcomes. Now, this can be seen especially when it comes to the Russian-Ukraine war. Now, over the weekend, China's defense minister met with President Putin. This visit came just shortly after President Xi had visited the Russian president. Now, President Putin referred to both the Chinese president and defense minister as comrades, showing his unity with the Asian country.
Well, it's clear Beijing's government supports Moscow, and they are aligned in most issues, including that they do not trust the West. However, there are strings attached to the partnership. Li Shangfu, Chinese defense minister, said in his meeting with Putin, quote, China-Russia relations have a clear historical logic and strong endogenic driving force. It has surpassed the military-political alliance model of the Cold War era.
Now, he continued, it is based on the principles of no alliance, no confrontation, and not targeting any third party. And it is free from any interference from any third party. Now, we have established a new model of relationship between major countries, Li concluded.
So the reason for the defense minister's visit is to push forward with the new defense agreement between Xi and Putin, which will give China access to Russian defense technology. Now, there are no specifics outlined for the general public yet, only signs like this visit. But it is clear China is wanting access to Russia's military capabilities, and President Putin seems very receptive to the idea.
Well, the son of Yoweri Museveni, the Ugandan president, recently showed the country's support for President Putin. Now, Muhoozi made this statement saying, call me Putinist if you want. We Ugandans should send soldiers to defend Moscow if ever it was threatened by imperialists. Now, the West is wasting its time with pro-Ukraine propaganda.
Well, this is not the first time Muhoozi, the 48-year-old Ugandan general, has openly showed his support for the Russian president. Uganda did not even cast their vote concerning the Ukrainian conflict when it came up in the UN Security Council meetings. This is just one African country, but there are many more just like it that no longer follow the rhetoric of the West or the European Union and will even go against it to some extent.
Well, another example is Julius Malema, a member of the South African Parliament and leader of the EFF, or Economic Freedom Fighters. Now, listen to his strong stance against the United States and NATO in this video, which has, of course, gone viral.
ICC, Putin is welcomed here, and no one is going to arrest Putin. If needs be, we'll go and fetch Putin from the airport to his meeting. He will finish all his meetings, we'll take him back to the airport. We're not going to be told by these hypocrites of the International Criminal Court who know the real violators of human rights, who know the murderers of this world. That former Prime Minister of Tony Blair admitted that they made a horrible mistake when it comes to Saddam Hussein. They've not been charged today. Bush is still there. They've not been charged till to date. And then Obama killed Gaddafi. And then nothing has happened. We're here today with Libya being destroyed and unable to recover because of America. We know very well that where NATO gets involved, those are terrorists. We know very well where the US says we are going in to install peace. That place will never know peace as long as America has visited that place. So we don't want ICC's hypocrisy to apply here in our country.
Well, I could definitely see why that went viral. Well, there are a lot of Christians in Russia today, but not a lot of Catholics. This next video helps us understand Russia's religious makeup and how the Pope's latest comments stirred many Russians, including the president himself, to point out the unfair attack on over 100 million Orthodox Christians. The Pope was basically forced to apologize. Please pay close attention to this next video.
Russia has a lot of Christians, but these are not Catholics. Catholics in Russia form just about 773,000 of the country's population. That represents 0.5% of the population. A vast majority of Russians are adherents of Orthodox Christianity. That has well over 100 million followers. Unlike Catholics, the center of Russians' belief and religious political representation is not the Vatican. It is very much within Russia. This is the Russian Orthodox Church, which is one of the biggest in the Eastern Orthodox Communion. Since a majority of Russian Christians do not believe in the supremacy of the Pope or the Vatican, they end up locking horns with the man considered to be a supreme functionary of God in this world. We're talking about the Pope right now. For Catholics, the Pope represents a direct link back to Jesus. Catholics see Jesus as being present today in the papacy. Russia and its people, though, hold no such ideas about the Pope or the Vatican. Russia said on Thursday that it had received an apology from the Vatican over Pope Francis's comments last month that Russian soldiers from some ethnic minority groups were the cruelest fighters. The Pope was referring to Muslims, Buddhists, and Russian shamanics. His remarks from last month suggested that he believed that Russian Christians were the only people following the true Russian tradition. Moscow was furious with this insinuation and lodged a strong protest with the Vatican. In a statement to journalists on Thursday, the Vatican spokesman Matteo Bruni said, and I quote, "I can confirm, regarding the comments made by the Russians about the apology from the Vatican, that there have been diplomatic contacts in this regard." The admission from the Vatican came after Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said that Moscow had received an official apology from the Pope. The Vatican's letter reportedly said that the sovereign city apologizes to the Russian side and reaffirms its deep respect for all the peoples of Russia, their dignity, faith, and culture, as well as for other countries and peoples of the world. The ability to admit one's mistakes is becoming less and less common in modern international communication. Russia added that it now considered the matter closed and hoped for a constructive dialogue between Moscow and the Vatican. In many ways, faith is one of the reasons why Russia and Ukraine have sparred with each other lately. Metropolitan Kirill, who is the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, is a vociferous supporter of President Vladimir Putin. He has referred to the invasion of Ukraine as a religious war. For the Russian Orthodox Church, this is a battle against evil forces determined to break the unity of the Russian motherland. Ukraine has cracked down on churches and clerics affiliated to the Russian Orthodox Church. Russia likes to think of itself as the seat of modern Orthodox Christianity. So, a new and anti-Russian Orthodox Church coming up in Ukraine was viewed as a threat to Russia's hold over the Orthodox faith. Vladimir Putin has used a smart strategy. He has courted almost all religious leaders within Russia, and they all back him. With their backing comes the support of their congregations. So, when the Pope spoke against a particular set of Russians, the Kremlin viewed it as an attempt to divide Russians on ethnic and religious lines. For Putin, that sort of an experiment could pose a challenge, especially during a war. So, Moscow quickly escalated the matter with the Vatican and got the Pope to apologize. Who do you think had the last laugh?
Katan, seems like there's more wars fought over religions than anything else.
That's right. And Putin has been very adamant to keep not only the ways of the West, but the Catholic Church out of their country, holding fast to their strong Orthodox Christian ideology.
Right, and as we saw with some of these other articles there, they do not want that Western influence in their country at all.
Yeah, and we're seeing that spread not only from there in Russia, but also in parts of Africa, and they're unifying with Russia as well.
Well, if you'd like to find out more about these stories, contact the House of Yahweh. When you do, don't forget your copy of the free Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at The House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also go to you can also visit our website at YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And don't forget the Israel Says and Ask Israel programs, the best study aids to assist you in growing in your scriptural understanding. You can find those by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.